We tend to see layers of managers as a sign of a bloated, inefficient company. But what if they aren't a symptom of failure, but a necessary response to success? Understanding this reveals the fundamental tension every growing business has to face.
Yeah, the common view is pretty straightforward. The more managers you have, the more bureaucracy you get, the slower decisions become, and the higher the costs. This perspective usually frames a deep management hierarchy as just corporate bloat, something that needs to be cut.
But the thing is, these layers rarely just appear by accident. They're typically a systemic response to the very real and often very chaotic challenges that come with trying to scale a business. They actually exist to solve problems that a simpler structure just can't handle.
To really understand why, it helps to start where most companies do, with the ideal of a flat, agile organization.
A flat organization is, well, it's exactly what it sounds like. There's very little hierarchy. The lines of communication are short, and the people who are doing the day-to-day work are often in direct contact with the people making the big decisions.
And you can see why this structure is so appealing, especially for new companies. With fewer managers on the payroll, salary costs are obviously lower, decisions can be made really quickly without needing to go up a long chain of command. All this gives employees more autonomy and lets the company pivot and adapt to changes really fast.
But this ideal model, it has a breaking point. As a company gets bigger, the very things that made it so fast and flexible start to become a source of friction. You know, organizations tend to evolve through some pretty predictable phases. They start out small, informal, and agile. But as they find success and start to grow, the need for more formal structures becomes almost unavoidable. This shift from a scrappy startup to a more mature, hierarchical organization is a really natural part of the business lifecycle.
And in a growing flat company, you start to see these very specific pain points emerge. A single leader just can't effectively manage dozens of people. Their span of control becomes totally unmanageable. Communication starts to break down. The founder ends up being a bottleneck for every single decision. Roles begin to overlap, which creates a lot of confusion. And without any kind of ladder to climb, your most talented employees might start looking for growth somewhere else.
So, this leads to a critical question. When that informal, flat system can no longer handle the complexity, what's the systemic response? How do you restore order and enable even more growth?
Well, the answer is the introduction of a new layer, the middle manager. And this isn't about adding bureaucracy just for the sake of it. It's a structural solution designed to fix the problems of scale.
A middle manager serves a very specific purpose. They act as this crucial link, translating the high-level vision from the executives into concrete, actionable steps for their teams. And, just as important, they relay information from the front lines back up the chain.
Their first key function is technical. They're the ones responsible for the day-to-day operations. They make sure the work is getting done correctly, they monitor performance, and they ensure processes are being followed. Basically, they manage all the details so the top executives don't have to. Second is the human element. Middle managers are team leaders. It's their job to motivate their people, to provide support, to manage conflicts, and to build a productive, cohesive team. This is all the people management work that founders and executives simply run out of time to do as the company grows.
And third, they play a strategic role. They take those big picture goals from senior leadership and break them down into practical, actionable plans for their teams. And crucially, they also gather insights from the ground level about performance, about challenges, and report that information upward, which helps inform future strategy.
Of course, this solution isn't without its own consequences. Adding layers to the organization introduces a whole new set of trade-offs.
What you end up with is a balancing act. On the one hand, a vertical structure makes it much easier to scale the business. It creates clear roles and career paths, and it provides more direct support for employees. But on the other hand, it's more expensive, communication can slow down, and you run the risk of creating isolated departmental silos or even micromanagement.
So what this all really reveals is that the entire process is a system of compromise. There really is no single best structure that works for every company at every stage of its life.
When you boil it all down, you're looking at two different structures, each one optimized for a different priority. A flat structure is built for speed and agility, which is perfect for a small organization that's still finding its way. A vertical structure, with its layers of management, is optimized for control and scalability, which is a necessity for a large organization to function effectively.
So, in the end, the existence of management layers isn't really an indictment of a company's efficiency. Instead, it reflects a deliberate choice. It represents a fundamental trade-off,
a decision to sacrifice some of the raw speed of a startup in exchange for the control and order needed to scale.